I sat there for a long time just staring at the words. My mind tried to label it as a joke, a mistake, something explainable. But my chest knew better. A slow, sinking weight settled in. It was the exact time I left for work. Nothing about this felt random. The note was written in her handwriting. I would have known it anywhere. The slight curve of her R's. The looping tail of her lowercase y's. Innocuous. Familiar. And now devastating. It felt like finding a loaded gun in a child's toy chest. I didn't touch the paper. I didn't fold it. Didn't move it. Just watched it like it might scurry away if I blinked. There's a strange kind of stillness that happens when your life cracks in two. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just wait. Like your body is holding its breath for your soul to catch up. The ceiling fan hummed above me. A breeze moved the curtains like a quiet whisper. You were right all along. I thought about the past few weeks. The half-hearted kisses. The way she angled her body away when she hugged me. The new underwear she bought but never wore around me. I remembered asking her about it once. She said it was just for confidence. I guess I should have asked, whose? I sat on the edge of the bed where I'd laid my life beside hers for 6 years. The bedsheet was still warm from her. There were faint creases on the pillow where her head had been. But in that moment I realized she had been gone long before this morning. She just didn't leave a note until now. She would never do that, I used to tell myself. And maybe that was true. The woman I married wouldn't. But the woman she'd become, the one who left that folded scrap of lined paper like it was a receipt for borrowed time, she might. And if she could, then what else had I missed? I didn't confront her. I didn't call or text. I didn't storm out or scream into a pillow. Instead, I folded the note and slid it into the drawer beside our bed. Not to forget, but to remember exactly where it all began to unravel. Some betrayals don't scream. They whisper from under your pillow. I didn't confront her. I just started noticing. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You chalk it up to stress, to imagination, to the slow rot of routine. But then the smallest things begin to hum with tension, like a high-pitched sound only your heart can hear. Her laughter used to be an invitation. Now it was a locked door. I'd walk into a room and the sound of it would still hang in the air, but never for me. It was brighter, freer. The kind of laugh you don't fake. The kind that meant something was alive in her again, and I knew I wasn't it. The bed became foreign, like a hotel you've stayed in once but can't quite remember. The sheets were crisp in a way that felt deliberate. Smoothed over. Tucked too perfectly. And there was a scent, sweet, unfamiliar, not mine, not hers. At least, not the hers I used to know. I caught myself standing in the hallway one morning, holding her towel to my face. Not because I missed her, but because I was trying to prove something to myself, to the silence, to the mirror across from me. I didn't find anything. Just steam and the faint trace of citrus and smoke. Then there were the coffee cups. She never used to drink two. She barely finished one. But lately, there were always two on the counter. Not side by side, no. That would be too obvious. One by the sink. One on the windowsill. Both used. One still warm. I told myself it could have been from earlier. From yesterday. From nothing. But it never was. These weren't confessions. They were shadows. And I lived in them, stumbling half-blind through a version of our life that felt staged. Polished smiles. Timed affection. Like I was acting beside someone who had rewritten her role and forgotten to tell me. I found a hair tie beneath the couch. Not her color. Not mine to recognize. I asked about it, half joking. She shrugged, said it must have been old. But her voice had a catch in it, like a skipped record. And still, I said nothing. Because how do you question someone without a crime? How do you accuse a ghost? Love, I think, doesn't die all at once. It bleeds out quietly, drop by drop, until the person beside you is a stranger in your own kitchen humming a song they never used to know. The worst part wasn't the coffee. It was that I started expecting it. I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I just installed a camera. Because some truths aren't found in arguments, they're found in footage. In quiet frames. In time-stamped betrayals that don't flinch when confronted. It was small. Black. No bigger than a matchbox. I placed it behind the bookshelf in our bedroom, angled just so, catching the edge of the bed, the doorway, the space where she always stood to take off her necklace. I remember thinking how easy it was. How simple it felt. No adrenaline. No guilt. Just stillness. The kind of calm that comes when you know a fire is coming and all you want is to know where the first spark lands. That morning, I left the house like I always did. 7:45, briefcase in hand. Shirt pressed. I even kissed her on the cheek. She smiled, told me to have a good one. It sounded rehearsed. I nodded, told her to try and rest. But I wasn't thinking about the client call or the project deadline. I was thinking about what I'd see by nightfall. It was a strange kind of anticipation. Not fear. Not dread. Almost like peace. Because for weeks, I've been living in the space between suspicion and certainty, and that space is agony. Every touch feels contaminated. Every silence becomes a scream. So I chose certainty. Not a confrontation. Not a scene. Just a lens. Just light. Just time. There was a moment just before I shut the front door when I turned back. She was standing in the kitchen, flipping through the mail. She didn't look up. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't hoping to catch her. I was hoping to be wrong. That maybe the coffee cups were hers. That the perfume on the pillow was a fluke. That my body had turned against me, seeing ghosts, hearing lies in her laughter. That this paranoia was mine alone to carry. But the camera didn't care what I hoped. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't afraid. It would see whatever was there. And I would too. By the time I got to the office, I couldn't remember the drive. I sat at my desk, stared at my screen, nodded through meetings. But my mind was home. Watching. Waiting. The minutes didn't tick. They dragged. Because sometimes what breaks you isn't the betrayal, it's the hour before you confirm it. The footage didn't lie. It never flinched. It watched what I couldn't. I sat there in the dark, alone, the only light in the room coming from the soft, cold glow of the screen. My breath was slow, heavy, deliberate, like I was bracing for impact that had already happened. I fast-forwarded at first. Part of me wanted to avoid it, to skip past the before. But I made myself watch. I had to see what trust looks like when it dies. She was on the bed. Our bed. The same side she always claimed, the same pillow she used to bury her face in when she laughed in the middle of the night. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't hesitant. She looked practiced. He walked in minutes later. And time stopped. Familiar. Too familiar. His gait. His voice. His smirk as he peeled off his jacket and tossed it where I used to leave mine. And she lit up, not the way she did for me. This was brighter. Wilder. Like a spark had been reignited, one I never even knew had gone out. They didn't speak much. Just touched. Laughed. Moaned. No shame. No caution. No, what if he comes home early? As if I never existed. And then, at some point, when I think she was laughing at something he said, he turned. Not just toward the window. Not toward the clock. Toward the camera. Toward me. He didn't know, of course. It was coincidence. A glance. A turn of the head. But it felt personal. Direct. Like he had looked me in the eyes and dared me to blink. And that's when it shattered. Because it wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some faceless name. It was him. My best man. My co-founder. My friend of 14 years. The man who held the ring on our wedding day. Who toasted to her forever. Who once joked that if she ever left me, he'd hunt her down for being blind. And now here he was in my house, in my bed, in her arms. I paused the footage. The room fell silent. The air didn't move. It felt like watching my own funeral. Except I was still breathing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break the laptop, though I wanted to. I just sat there, my hands numb, heart slow, trying to process the image that would live behind my eyelids for years to come. People say betrayal feels like a knife in the back. They're wrong. It feels like watching someone smile with your wife and realizing they've been doing it for a long, long time. I shook his hand. He smiled. Neither of us meant it. We sat across from each other in the conference room we'd once celebrated our first deal in. The same room where we'd toasted cheap whiskey over late nights and built something we swore would outlast us both. He looked relaxed. Confident. Like a man who thought he still knew me. New contract? He asked, nodding toward the manila folder between us. I smiled back. Just enough to keep the room cold. Something like that, I said. The pages were thick, over 40 in total. I'd stayed up all night reviewing them, line by line, until every clause bled precision. The buyout was airtight. The terms clear. Every loophole sewn shut like a body bag. And at the very end, I had clipped a flash drive. I didn't label it. Didn't need to. He reached for the folder casually, like he'd done 1,000 times before. Flipped through the first few pages, brow furrowed in mock scrutiny, still trying to wear the mask of the easygoing partner. But then he saw it, the small black USB, its label blank but unmistakable. His hands stopped moving. He looked up. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. There was a flicker behind his eyes, not guilt, not yet. Just confusion. Then dawning. Then the first shadow of fear. He knew. He didn't ask what was on it. He didn't need to. The file name alone had taken the air out of the room, guestbedroom_chem1_07_11.mov. He stared at it like it might explode. I kept my gaze steady, calm, unflinching. Not angry. Not emotional. Just done. Everything's there, I said quietly. The footage. The buyout. Your exit clause. Sign it and it's yours. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Swallowed. His face went pale. And in that silence I felt something lift. A pressure that had lived inside my ribs for weeks, months, maybe gone. He didn't apologize. He didn't defend himself. And I didn't offer forgiveness. That was never the point. This wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. This was about truth sealed and delivered. A partnership ended. A chapter closed. And across the table, the man who had taken everything I valued most now understood what it felt like to lose. He signed the papers with a hand that shook just enough to betray him. And when he left, he didn't look back. Some betrayals don't need confrontation. Just clarity. And closure. She was out shopping. Or pretending to be. At that point, I didn't care. The performance had gone on long enough, the pretend errands, the quick spritz of perfume before stepping out, the careful routine of a woman who thought she still had me convinced. She didn't know I'd already made my exit. Not in body, but in soul. In belief. In love. I didn't pack loudly. I didn't slam drawers or toss things into bags. I moved the way grief moves when it has nothing left to say, quiet, deliberate, final. And when it came time to leave, I placed the flash drive where it all began. Her pillow. Neat. Centered. The same way she used to fold notes for me when we were still in love. When hearts were soft and Sunday mornings were slow and real. No note. No yelling. Just that small black rectangle of truth. It didn't need a title anymore. She would know exactly what it was. I didn't want to see her face. I'd seen enough already through the lens, on the screen, in the way her eyes flickered when she lied and thought I couldn't tell. The house felt hollow as I stepped out. Not empty hollow. Like it had been echoing for months with a silence I'd mistaken for peace. But now I knew it was something else. Indifference. Detachment. The slow death of us. I left the key on the counter. One last look at the place we called ours, though it hadn't felt like mine in a long time. Not since the note. Not since the second coffee cup. Not since I started sleeping beside a stranger in a borrowed skin. Outside, the world kept spinning. The wind was crisp. The light was gold. And for the first time in a long time, I walked away with nothing in my hands, but everything intact. She came home to silence. Not rage. Not confrontation. Not the storm she might have expected. Just her bed. Her room. And the truth resting exactly where her head used to lay. Some endings don't come with slamming doors. Some just whisper, you lost me, and vanish like breath on cold glass. She didn't call. Not that day. Not the next. I watched the screen sometimes, I'll admit. Not out of hope. Just out of curiosity, the way you check a wound to see if it still bleeds. But there was nothing. No missed calls. No apologies. Not even a text to ask why. I think she knew there was nothing left to say. Maybe she saw the flash drive. Maybe she watched it all, frame by frame, the way I had. Maybe she sat in the same silence I did, feeling something snap where words used to live. Or maybe she didn't watch it at all. Maybe she knew exactly what it contained and had known long before I did and just accepted the loss. Quietly. Casually. Like the way she took off her wedding ring on days she forgot to wear it. The absence of a reaction hurt more than a scream ever could. No denial. No bargaining. Just quiet. She didn't come running. She didn't beg. Didn't reach for the parts of us still salvageable. And I think that's what broke me in the end, not the betrayal, not even the affair. It was the ease with which she let me go. As if I was already gone. Maybe she thought I'd come back. That I'd yell. Cry. Ask why. Demand closure. But I'd already done all that in my head 1,000 times over. Screamed into pillows. Replayed moments. Imagined different endings. She never had to witness that part of me. By the time I walked away, I was already empty. That phone never rang. And somehow that silence was louder than any goodbye. Some losses you mourn with tears. Others with stillness. And this was the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't echo because it was never heard to begin with. It wasn't just her. It wasn't just him. It was us. That's the part that stays. That clings even when the pain dulls and the memories start to blur around the edges. Because they didn't just betray me, they built it. Together. Like architects. Like artists. Like co-conspirators writing a story where I was the fool. Looking back, it's almost insulting how obvious it was. The late meetings he pushed for. We need to get ahead of Q3, he said. Her sudden interest in marketing strategy. the department she used to joke about being allergic to. "I can't even spell analytics," she once laughed. But suddenly, she was studying click-through rates like her life depended on it. They were rehearsing every overlap in their schedules, every shared Uber from the office. Every time I'd get a text, "running late, don't wait up," and I'd believe it, because that's what trust does. It blinds you with familiarity. It didn't happen in a moment. It happened in whispers, in glances, in missed dinners and inside jokes I wasn't part of. They designed it like a strategy, like a product launch, and I was the last to know. The realization hit me slowly, like a bruise blooming beneath the skin. It wasn't just infidelity, it was choreography. Two people I loved, sketching out the parameters of my betrayal in bullet points and calendar invites. There's a cruelty in coordination, a kind of coldness that says, "This wasn't a mistake, this was a plan, and the part one can't shake." They must have talked about me, not just in passing, strategized, where I'd be, what I'd notice, what I wouldn't. They knew I trusted them both, that I would never question a meeting, a project, a long work dinner. They didn't break that trust in one moment. They used it, weaponized it, turned it into camouflage, like I was the only one who didn't get the script. And maybe I wasn't just mourning the relationship or the friendship. Maybe I was grieving the version of myself who believed I was safe in that life, who believed I mattered enough not to be lied to so precisely. Some betrayals cut deep because they're unexpected, but the real ones, the ones that hollow you out, they're crafted, planned, perfectly executed. He lost the company. She lost the home. I lost something else. I signed the final transfer last week. Everything's in my name now, every contract, every login, every dotted line that once linked us together like veins in a shared body. The business is fully mine. Mine. Hollow but mine. It should have felt like a triumph, like closing the last chapter with a flourish and setting the book on fire. But instead, it felt like signing the death certificate for a life I used to love, a partnership that once made sense, a friendship that used to mean something. The house sits quiet, not peaceful, not serene, just quiet in the way a hotel lobby feels at 3 a.m., still but not safe, haunted by echoes, footsteps that aren't there, laughter that once was. I thought revenge would bring peace, that if I took back what they tried to steal, the company, the dignity, the narrative, I'd feel whole again. But justice is colder than I expected. It doesn't comfort you at night. It doesn't fill the other side of the bed. It doesn't tell you who you are when your role as husband, friend, partner, all of it has been burned to ash. I won technically. I have the emails, the documents, the assets, but they took something I can't name, and in its place is silence. Long, stretching, undisturbed silence. Sometimes I walk through the house like I'm a guest. I stop at the hallway where her heels used to click. I glance into the office where he used to lean in the doorway, sipping coffee we brewed together. Now it's just me, and I'm starting to realize that you can win the battle, own the kingdom, and still feel like a ghost inside its walls. There's an emptiness success can't fill, cost nobody mentions, because when the dust settles, and your name's on every deed, every title, every victory, you still have to live with the quiet, and quiet doesn't care who was right. I wouldn't do it differently, but I wouldn't do it again. There's a kind of wisdom that only comes after loss, not the immediate kind, where pain feels like truth and revenge feels like clarity. No, it's the quiet kind, the kind that arrives long after the storm, when the glass has been swept, the photos taken down, and the silence finally stops echoing. Sometimes I wonder what they tell people, how they explain the fallout. Do they lie outright? Do they rewrite it into something palatable? A breakup? A falling out? A miscommunication between friends? Or do they omit me entirely, leave me as a ghost story, a cautionary tale not worth mentioning? But I don't follow their lives anymore. Not on socials, not through mutual friends, not in passing gossip or late-night temptation. That part of me, the part that needed to know, burned out. What they do now is none of my business. Not because I've forgiven, but because I've outgrown the version of me who needed their apology to move on. I walk quieter now. I speak less. I trust slower. There's something colder than betrayal. It's watching how easily people smile through the beginning of the end. They laughed. They joked. They played the part. There was no remorse in the moment, no second glance. Just the ease of two people living a lie so well they didn't notice who they were erasing in the process. I don't regret how I ended it. Not the camera. Not the flash drive. Not the silence. I don't regret reclaiming what they tried to take from me. But I know better now. Love isn't armor. Loyalty isn't always mirrored. And the heart, as much as we dress it in hope and vows, is not a shield. It's just a door. And if you leave it open long enough, someone will walk through without knocking. Now, I lock that door. Not out of fear. Not out of anger. But because I've learned that not everyone who smiles at you is staying. I've learned how endings feel long before they arrive. And I've learned that surviving isn't always triumphant. Sometimes it's just necessary. This story didn't leave me bitter. Just quieter.